Welcome one and all to a Trainlover16 video! Been a very long time since the last one, hasn't it? Not quite as long as the gap between the previous two reviews. Still pretty long. Can you guys tell I'm starting to lose motivation to do VHS reviews? Can you tell that they're on their way out now and I want to make much more professional content and content I'll enjoy making a lot more? Well, let's get this one over with, shall we? Because I have said I would do this one. So today we're covering a show I haven't yet covered in this series, Mr. Man. Specifically the 1974 series, aka the best era of Mr. Man, the 70s and 80s. Oh boy, is Mr. Man nostalgic to me. I've still got all the books. If you look carefully there, you'll see I've got loads of the books there. My parents watched the original 70s series a lot, and then when me and my sister were very young, they got the DVD of Mr. Man and of the entire 70s Mr. Man series on 2 DVDs, and me and my sister watched them religiously, and we loved them. So yeah, Mr. Man, the 70s series in particular, is very, very nostalgic to me. It may have already been 30 years old by the time I was born, but it's still become very, very nostalgic to me. It's charming, it's relaxing, the simplistic art style is very visually appealing, and the music is so memorable. But I'll go into detail about all of that during this review. So this is actually going to be a sort of a two-part review. So this review covering Mr. Man, next review, hopefully next week, you know, do them quite close together, will be Little Miss. So, here. So this one is Mr. Men 2. That has Mr. Impossible, Mr. Small, Mr. Daydream, Mr. Messy, Mr. Bump, Mr. Greedy, and Mr. Tickle. Distributed by CBS Fox. So here's the front, here's the spine, and here's the back. Here we are. So the original... So yeah, these ones are very, very accurate to the books. So yeah, 1974. This VHS was released in 1988. And it has a running time of 53 minutes. Right, sit back, relax, get some snacks and a drink if you like. This video is going to be about an hour long. We're not going to rewind it at the end because there's too much excess tape. I've already watched through this. There's also those available. This will probably be the only Mr. Men VHS I review because this series is coming to an end now. And the Little Miss VHS I review will also probably be the only one I review. Right, in you go. And onto the tripod you go. Oh shit. Well, yeah, if you hear me typing in the background and if I've gone quiet, it's because I'm either playing Roblox while watching this and or writing. I am good at multitasking, guys. Yep, CBS Fox. Turn it up a bit. Lovely. Oh, it cut off. The theme song got cut off a bit. This theme song will always be a bop to me. Well, maybe not quite a bop, but so good. This one tune is used constantly throughout the entire series, but it's so so memorable. How did the composer do it?
It's impossible to do the most amazing things. For instance...
Oh, shit. I'm sorry about this, Martin. Hang on. This hasn't happened for a while. Hang on. System menu. I'm so sorry. There we go.
It's impossible to do the most amazing things. For instance, he could jump over a house. Yeah, us. And Mr. Impossible could make himself invisible. All he had to do was to stand there and think about becoming invisible, and he became impossible.
So... Mr.
And Mr. Impossible could fly. All he had to do was stand there and wrap his arms about him. Off he flew.
So simple.
Impossible.
Yeah, as I said, I really like how the art style of the show from the 70s is exactly like the art style of the books.
Have you ever seen a house in such a possible place?
Can I have a look? Ow! Oh, hit my arm on the...
He was out walking in the woods when he met a frog.
Look, it's exactly the same art style. Exactly the same.
William was on his way to school.
And there are only very, very, very minor changes with the stories themselves. The Mr. Men TV show has to be one of, if not the most faithful book to TV adaptations I've in existence. Oh, and I like how Arthur gave Mr. Impossible an American accent, unlike all the other, Arthur Lowe,
Haven't come across anything I couldn't do.
I love how Arthur Lowe gives Mr. Impossible an American accent, unlike all the others, which he gives various British accents. I wonder what made Roger Hargreaves or Arthur Lowe decide that Mr. Impossible was American.
Put it forward again. Can you stand on one hand? Yeah? Well, I can do those, yeah. Right, Mr. Impossible. I can stand on no hands.
No hands.
He did. Huh. That's impossible. Right, well, sure it is. Right, Mr. Impossible.
Pardon me.
Then William remembered that he was on his way to school. Why don't you come with me? He asked. But I've never been to school before.
What? How have you not gone to school? I don't know.
Come.
How have you not gone to school before? When you're older than
William
William.
and Mr. Impossible sat at the back of William's classroom.
Where do Mr. Men get their education if they don't go to school?
He noticed that there was somebody extra in his class that morning. Morning, children, he said. I have a very difficult sum for you to do today. It will take you most of the morning to work out the answer. He wrote the sum.
Yeah, this is in the days before
It
calculators.
really was the most difficult sum William had ever seen in his whole life, full of adding up and taking away and multiplications and divisions.
difficult sums than that, but I have actually worked it out. The answer is apparently, the episode says that the answer is 23, and I actually worked this sum myself out earlier. I actually did this sum on a calculator when I was watching this through, and it is actually 23.
William put up his hand. Yes, William? Said the teacher. There's something about the sum that you don't understand. Please, sir, said William. Is the answer 23? Teacher, deaf, absolutely, totally, completely amazed. How did you work out sum so quickly? It's impossible.
No, it's not.
Rather impossible, mister.
It's not impossible.
Back of the class, and stood up.
I love how how it looks like William's wearing Mr. Impossible's hat.
After that, Mr. Impossible spent all day at the school. He showed the teacher how he could read a book upside down. But that's impossible, said the children who were watching. Yes, sir.
Well, working out a sum like that isn't actually impossible, especially with a calculator so quickly.
Sure would, replied Mr. Impossible. But I never played football before.
American football or British football?
He kicked the football.
The reason you've never played football is because they call football soccer where you come from, our football.
Then it was time to go home. Mr. Impossible said goodbye to all the people at school, and then he said goodbye to William. Goodbye, Mr. Impossible, said William. So long, William, said Mr. Impossible. Just disappeared. William rubbed his eyes and went home. William's mother and father were waiting for him. "Oh, William," they said, "do you have a good day at school?" "Yes," he replied. "And I met someone who could do anything in the world." Oh, really, William? They both laughed. "You're impossible."
You're impossible. Get it?
Went inside.
Mr. Impossible?
And 100 miles away, a small figure was listening to what William's mother and father were saying. And they went to sleep. Standing on the head. And we all know that that is downright impossible. Yes, sir.
Now, before I watched through this VHS, I didn't actually know the VHSs had these kinds of transitions.
Can you guess?
Arthur Lowe's scene with Mr. Ben theme is pretty charming. Now on to Mr. Small, who has a small, and he's called that because he has a small penis. No, not really. Well, I guess he does actually, because his whole body is small. Yeah, that one tune is used throughout the entire series and it just never gets old. How did the composer do that, using the same music over and over again, and it never getting old or feeling repetitive? That's how timeless the Mr. Men theme song has become. Almost, if not just as timeless as the Thomas theme song and its music. And this show only used one music track, whereas Thomas uses hundreds.
He was having half a pea.
No, he was having half a penis and a drop of wee-wee, which is disgusting. If you know where that joke is from, guys, you get a cookie.
So he had another drop of lemonade.
A drop of coke.
Hello, he thought to himself. After lunch, I'm going to see Mr. Robinson.
Mr. Robinson. Why is he called that? Is he the manager of the Robinson Drink Factory?
It's quite a long walk for somebody as small as Mr. Small. And halfway there, he stopped for a rest.
No, he stopped for a
He sat on
wank.
a pebble.
He had a wank.
He was quite out of breath. A worm crawled by and stopped. Good afternoon, Mr. Small. Said the worm. Good afternoon,
Walter.
Quite warm.
Oh, it's so the worm's name is Walter.
Going to see Mr. Robinson. Oh, said Walter the worm, and crawled off. Walter was a worm of very few words. After he rested for a while, Mr. Small set off again and walked all the rest of the way to Mr. Robinson's house without stopping to work. When he got there, he climbed up the steps to Mr. Robinson's back door. He knocked at the door. Nobody heard him.
No.
The trouble was, you see, that if you're as small as Mr. Small, you don't have a very loud knock. Mr. Small looked up. There, high above his head,
Arthur Lowe has such a relaxing voice. No wonder the Mr. Men stories are perfect bedtime stories. It's like pre 21st century ASMR. This in a way. In fact, bedtime stories in general were like pre 21st century ASMR in ways.
Will you ring the bell for me? Of course I will.
And he has a Cockney accent, and he somehow kind of looks like Postman Pat as well.
My pleasure, said the postman.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about Mr. Small.
Mr. Small, now.
Mr. Small isn't one of my favourite Mr. Men stories.
That's fine, he said.
I don't have much to say about Mr. Small, Mr. Small story.
Shut the door and he heard a little voice.
Apart from the memes that came from the 20-minute YouTube poop challenge.
Mr. Robinson looked down. Down? Hello, he said. What are you doing here? I've come to ask your advice. Mr. Small, Mr. Robinson. Well, Mr. Robinson, you better come in. Have a talk. Mr. Small followed Mr. Robinson into the house, and perched on the arm of Mr. Robinson's favourite chair, he told him how he couldn't think of a job that he could do.
Yeah, I need a job as well.
Mr. Robinson sipped a cup of tea and listened.
Cup of pee.
So you see, Mr. Small explained, how difficult it is. Yes. Yes, I can see that, said Mr. Robinson. But leave it to me. Mr. Robinson knew a lot of people.
So he's basically like his
who worked in the restaurant and arranged for Mr.
So Mr. Robinson is basically like a supported employment guy.
But Mr. Small kept falling into the pot and getting covered in mustard.
Oh
So
God.
he let that go. Mr. Robinson knew somebody who worked in a sweet shop and arranged for Mr. Small to work there, serving sweets. But Mr. Small kept falling into the sweet jars, so he let that go. Mr. Robinson knew somebody who worked in a place where they made matches and arranged for Mr. Small
It's
to work
funny
there.
because Mr. Small would later work in a corner shop in the Little Miss series.
But Mr. Small kept getting shut in the boxes with the matches.
Oh God.
So he left that job. Mr. Robinson knew somebody who worked on a farm.
Oh,
Mr. Small
farms and Mr. Man never mix well, do they? Especially with
But
Mr. Small and Mr. Bump and a few others. Yeah, farms and Mr. Men don't tend to mix.
what are we going to do with you? Mr. Robinson asked Mr. Small one evening. Don't know, said Mr. Small in a small voice. I've got one more idea, said Mr. Robinson. I know somebody who writes...
Mr. Small has a small voice and a small penis. Why do I keep
So,
saying?
the following day, Mr. Robinson took Mr. Small to meet the man who...
Oh, now this is interesting. How Mr. Small is essentially Mr. Roger Hargreaves' assistant.
That pencil and tell me all about the job you've been doing. Then I'll write a story about it. I call it Mr. Small.
Ah, so I like how it's implied that in this universe. I love how it's implied that in this universe, in the Mr. Men universe, Mr. Small is Roger Hargreaves' assistant.
I like it very much.
Oh, and it just abruptly ends like that. I love this.
What a lot of Mr. Men there are. I wonder which one we should be meeting next. Can you guess?
We're going to be meeting your mother. Mr. Daydream's an interesting one, but this one wasn't. Yeah, even as a kid, some of the Mr. Men stories I liked more than others. This Mr. Daydream is one that I didn't like as much as some of the others, like Mr. Bump, Mr. Happy, and Mr. Strong. Yeah, those three are among my favourites.
This is a story about Mr. Daydream. You know what he looks like, don't you, because you've seen him at the beginning.
Yes, fourth wall break.
It's also a story about a little boy called Jack.
Who jacks off? Sorry. Oh, my. At this point, you should all know that my.
He always ate up his lunch, he always went to bed when he was told, he always said please and thank you. But Jack was a daydreamer. Whenever he was supposed to be thinking about something, he found himself thinking about something else.
Yeah.
Daydream. One day, Jack was at school. He was sitting at his desk, listening to the teacher talking about history.
What kind of history?
Out of the corner of his eye,
Which history?
Jack saw something outside the window, on the grass in front of the school. It was small, cloud-shaped something. He couldn't believe his eyes. The figure looked at Jack, looking at him, smiled, and waved. Jack looked at his teacher, who was still talking, and bowed quietly, ever so quietly, and slipped out.
God.
He crossed the grass to the strange-looking, cloud-shaped figure. Hello, he said. Who are you? Oh, I'm Mr. Daydream.
Very grand voice he has.
I'm going off on an adventure. Daydream said to Jack. Would you like to come with me?
Oh, stranger danger. Grand talk, stranger danger.
Two figures in his mouth. He let out the loudest whistle Jack had ever heard in his whole
Oh yeah, that would be a bit of a jump scare to a lot of people, especially as this like supposed to be like bedtime stories.
Beside Jack and Mr. Daydream. Come on, said Mr. Daydream to Jack. Climbed onto the bird's back. Jack climbed on too.
With a ladder that they got out of thin air somehow.
Hold on, said Mr. Daydream. Jack held on tight. The huge bird flapped its huge wings, and suddenly they were high up in the air. They flew over fields
And they were also literally high.
valleys until they were far, far away from Jack's school.
Oh, there's a railway line down there.
Mr. Daydream turned to Jack. How would you like to go to Africa? He shouted. They were travelling so fast now that Jack just nodded his head and held on even tighter. Suddenly, no time at all, there below them was Africa.
Africa.
The bird landed in a jungle clearing. Jack and Mr. Daydream climbed off the bird's back. It was very hot. Come on, said Mr. Daydream to Jack. Let's go and explore. So off they set, pushing their way through the jungle. Suddenly, in the middle of the clearing, they saw an elephant. Hello, Daydream.
Stupid voice for an elephant.
You like to do? Yes,
And why is it a pink elephant?
And the elephant reached out its trunk, picked him up, and then put him on his back. He reached reached out his trunk again, picked up Jack, and put him on his back. Say hi! The elephant carried them through the jungle until they get to the river. Then he set them down on the ground and said, "Burr."
What's that voice? Oh, Arthur's narration is just hilarious at times.
Perhaps I can be of assistance.
All these different voices and tonal inflections that Arthur can do. So amazing. Rest in peace, Arthur. I'm pretty sure he's dead now.
It was very helpful. They were halfway across the river on the crocodile's back when the crocodile grinned a rather nasty grin.
You shouldn't have trusted him.
And no smile. Then, flicking his enormous tail and shooting Jack and Mr. Daydream up into the air, the crocodile opened his horribly large mouth and waited. It was very frightening. "Oh dear," said Jack, as he looked down at that enormous mouth of his teeth. "Oh dear. Oh, help!" Mr. Daydream, upside down beside him, put 2 fingers in his mouth and let out a very loud whistle of his. Suddenly, just as the crocodile's mouth was about to go snap, a big bird swooped down out of the sky. Mr. Daydream and Jack landed right on the bird's back. "Phew," said Jack. "Foiled again," said the crocodile. "Well,
You shouldn't have trusted that bastard.
"Aye," grinned Mr. Daydream. "But you certainly did," said Jack. "And now," said Mr. Daydream, "I think we'll go to Australia." It did.
Around the world
Jack learned to
adventure.
throw a boomerang. So it
In
always
such a very fast time.
Now, Mr. Daydream, I think we'll go to the North Pole. They did. Mr. Daydream fell right up to his middle of the snowdrift. And now, said Mr. Daydream, I think we'll go to the Wild West. They did. Mr. Daydream found a huge 10-gallon cowboy hat.
10-gallon.
Why
Why they
it
call
was and put
gallon?
it on, he couldn't see out. "Yeah," he called from underneath the hat. "Yeah." Jack! Suddenly, Jack realized that it wasn't Mr. Daydream saying his name. It was his teacher. And Jack wasn't in the Wild West. He was sitting at his school desk. Jack,
You think they...
who'd been daydreaming. It was true. He had. Or had he?
Interesting. Sus. Was he, wasn't he? Whole thing.
What a lot of Mr. Men there are. I wonder which one we should be meeting next.
So charming.
Can you guess?
Doing your mum. Doing your mum. Mr. Messy. Yeah, this I always found this story pretty interesting. Mess everywhere. Of course. Oh, and I like how the titles are like mud patch, messy patches and things. Nostalgia.
Mr. Messy was the messiest person you've ever met in your whole life.
Of course.
He looked messy because he was messy in everything he did. You could always tell where Mr. Messy had been because he left a trail of messy fingerprints. Oh yes, Mr. Messy was messy by name, messy by nature.
Yeah, that's also
Mr. Messy lived in a particularly messy-looking house.
X by name and X by nature is a running quote in the Mr. Men series.
The flower beds were overgrown with weeds, and the garden gates were like its pictures. And had Mr. Messy cut the grass in his garden lately? He had not. One morning, Mr. Messy woke up,
Yeah, Mr. Messy's like a lot like me.
scratched, got up, cleaned his teeth, leaving the top off the toothpaste, had his breakfast, spilling coarsely all over the floor, and then set out for a walk, looking over the brush he'd left
Yeah, I like.
in the garden 2 weeks before.
Yep.
There was
Yeah.
a wood
Yeah, cleaning
Right, Mr. Messi's messy house with the messy garden.
I'm surprised Mr. Messy actually cleaned his teeth at all, given that he's messy.
Lots of trees, and it took Mr. Messy a long time to walk through it. But he didn't really mind, because he felt like working that morning. So he walked right through the wood until he came to the other side. And you know what he found? The other side. Mr. Messy found the neatest, prettiest looking little cottage that he had ever seen.
Complete opposite of his
A
house.
lovely little garden with a stream running through the middle of it. There was a man in the garden clipping a hedge. He looked up as Mr. Messy approached. "Morning! I'm Mr. Messy," said Mr. Messy. "I can see that," replied the man looking up and down. "I'm Mr. Tidy." "And I'm Mr. Neat," said another man near Harry's house. "Tidy and neat," said Mr. Tidy. "Neat and tidy," said Mr. Neat. We're in business together," explained Mr. Tidy. "The people who own this house have asked us to do some work for them." "What sort of work?" asked Mr. Messy. "Oh, we make things nice and neat," said Mr. Neat. "Tidy things up," added Mr. Tidy. Perhaps we could come along and do some work for you," said Mr. Neat, looking at Mr. Messy, who was looking even messier than usual that particular morning.
Oh,
"But I don't want things neat and tidy," said Mr. Messy, looking downright miserable who thought of it. "Nonsense," said Mr. Tidy.
it's not because I don't want to have a tidy room. For me, I'm messy because I just can't be arsed.
Said he. "Off we go," said Mr. Tidy. But, said Mr. Messy. "But nothing," said Mr. Neat, and bundling him into their van.
They're kidnapping him.
Off they went to Mr. Messy's house.
Oh yeah, and that sound effect is synonymous with that vehicle driving sound effect is also synonymous with Mr. Man.
Let me, added Mr. Tidy. "This is the messiest house I've ever seen in all my born days." They both said together at the same time. "Let us do something about it," said Mr. Neat. And before Mr. Messy could open his mouth, the two of them were rushing here and there about Mr. Messy's house. Mr. Neat hoed, and rode, and grew, snipped, clipped, cleared, and done, and made the garden look neater than it had ever looked before. Mr. Tidy cleaned, primed, rubbed, painted, mended, and made the house of Mr. Messy look tidier than it had ever looked before. Then they both went inside the house. "Good heavens," said Mr. Neat for the second time that morning. "Good gracious," said Mr. Tidy for the second time.
Scottish accent.
And then they set about cleaning the house from top to bottom. They brushed, swept, polished, rubbed, and made the inside of the house look neater and tidier than it had ever looked before. "There we are," said Mr. Tidy.
They're
"All
bros.
finished," said Mr. Neat.
That implies they have a
Said
bromance.
Mr. Tidy.
Yeah, that implies they have a bromance.
Said Mr. Neat. Mr. Messy just didn't know what to say. Then they both looked at Mr. Messy. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Mr. Neat said to Mr. Tidy. "Precisely," said Mr. Tidy. What we're both thinking, boy," they said together to Mr. Messy, "is that, now the house is so neat and tidy, you are much too messy to live in it." But said Mr. Messy. But whatever Mr. Messy said was no use, and Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy whisked him off to the bathroom upstairs. It had been the messiest room in the house. Now, of course, it was as bright as a new pin. Then Mr. Neat got hold of one of Mr. Messy's arms, and Mr.
Oh, that could count as assault.
And they picked him up and put him straight into the bath.
Dumped him in.
Mr. wasn't used to having baths. Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy washed, brushed, and
Why was there a bath in his house at all if
he didn't.
if he's not used to having baths?
He looked the opposite of messy. He looked at himself in the mirror. You know what I'm going to have to do now?" he said in a rather fierce voice. Mr. Neat and Mr. Tidy looked worried.
Sue
"What are
you.
you going to have to do?"
Sue you. Sue the both of you.
"I'm going to have to change my name," said
Mr. Clean.
And he chuckled.
I swear the last part of that episode was cut out. I swear there was another part of that episode where they would laugh together and then it ended.
Can you guess?
So what happens? What happened in the edit? When this tape was being put together? Doing your wrong. Oh, Mr. Bump. This one is very nostalgic to me. This story was among the most I read/watched as a kid. Really liked this one. So yeah, this one's particularly nostalgic to me.
This is the sad story
Of Henry. The sad story of Henry and the sad story of Mr. Bump.
Having little accidents. If there was something for Mr. Bump to bump into...
Once a blue oval attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain.
And if there happened to be something to bump into down that street, then you know what would happen, don't you? Bump.
Mr. Bump also has a huge bum. His alternate name is Mr. Bum. Well, that's a pretty...
nice home.
Yeah, it's a pretty large one as
He
well.
couldn't help having those little accidents.
Also, even as a kid, I noticed this. Why does Mr. Bump's house door yellow for a second and then it suddenly becomes red? Never understood that. Very clear animation error.
Himself. And he hurried off to his garden shed to fetch a ladder.
So yeah, that tune in one form or another is always played throughout this. That tune in one form or another is played all throughout the series, and it never gets old.
It was a very long ladder.
Yes, because it's as long as my
The
penis.
ladder on his shoulder.
But yeah, whenever Arthur opened the story with "This is the sad story of Mr. Bump," I always thought of the sad story of Henry.
And he turned to see what had happened. Crash.
I'm sure you can imagine why.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
And he rested the ladder against the wall of the house so that he could climb up onto the roof to mend the chimney pot. Crash at the bedroom window.
Oh.
So you can see how Mr. Bump had his...
Oh, now the door's blue! What the hell?
Mr. Bump had had many jobs, but somehow never seemed to last very long.
Little accidents.
Got lost. Or broken.
As in toilet accidents.
Chipped. Or snapped. Or cracked.
Female Mr. Bump there.
Or burst. Or wrenched.
Chauffeur there.
Crunch.
Crunch your ass.
Or split. Or slit. Guess who got the blame?
Of course.
For instance, when Mr. Bump had worked on a farm.
Oh, case in point with how Mr. Men and farms don't mix very well right here.
He tripped over the farm dog and spilt the milk. And the farm cat lapped it up.
So cute.
For instance, when Mr. Bump was a postman, he got his hand stuck in the pillar box.
Cat Icarus got his hand stuck in a post box once. Oh, pillar box. You can tell it's British because he said pillar box. It's a very British term. Oh yeah, and because it's the 70s, they're using a bell and not a siren on that fire engine.
For instance, when Mr. Bump was a carpenter, he found that when he was hammering nails, he hammered his thumb most of the time, and the nail hardly at all.
Because you've got your thumb on the words. Put it behind the nail. Put your fingers behind the nail. It's not that hard to avoid bashing your fingers and your thumb.
To go away for a holiday. There, he could think of
I always loved how the train looked.
So he set off to the station to catch a train to the seaside.
Yeah, I always loved how the train looked. Orange and with those
Well,
wheels.
Mr. Bump was on holiday.
And the sound of the wheels going round and as it goes along the tracks. I also
He was
really
taken
liked.
off a boat into the sea, and the lifeboat had to come and rescue him.
And the boat just leaves him behind and doesn't wait for him to get back on. He's like, person driving it's like, fuck you, asshole.
And as he couldn't get it off, he had to hop round with it on his foot for hours. And as he hopped along,
That noise is
he
also
hopped straight into
hilarious.
a large hole that somebody had dug. And he had to stay there all night because he couldn't climb out on his own.
What, no one thought to get him out or even saw him? The people of this seaside town are assholes, leaving Mr. Bump behind, the guy who was piloting the boat and nobody getting him out.
Splendid idea.
The people of the seaside town Mr. Bump went to are complete assholes. How have I only just realised that? All the times I've watched this story, how have I never realised that the people of that seaside town are assholes?
And now, Mr. Bump works happily for Mr. Barley, the farmer. Mr. Barley has a rather large apple orchard on his farm.
And he also has a large cock.
Where Mr. Bump works. Mr. Bump's job is picking apples,
Picking my nose as well.
but he doesn't use a ladder to climb up the tree to pick the apples, like other apple pickers all know. No, Mr. Bump has a much better way of picking apples than that. He just walks about. And before long, Mr. Bump, being Mr. Bump, walks into a tree. Down falls an apple. And Mr. Bump catches it. This makes the job of picking apples much easier. Mr. Bump is very pleased about his new job, and Mr. Barley is very pleased about his new apple picker. So, you see, the story of Mr. Bump isn't such a sad story after all.
I guess not. Unlike the sad story of Henry. Oh, now the music's changed to the normal Mr. Men theme song, and not Arthur singing it. We've already seen this bit, and as it's just the shit, stupid batteries. As it's just the theme song this time, and as we've seen this so much, we'll skip it. Let's fast forward a little bit. Mr. Greedy. I always found this one pretty interesting. Don't be a greedy fat ass. So the moral of the story, he's eating that. Yeah, the moral of the story, the moral of the story is literally don't be a fat ass. Get some exercise and stop eating so much, which is something I need to do. Stop eating so much.
Mr. Greedy liked to eat.
Of
In
course.
fact, Mr. Greedy loved to eat. And the more he ate, the fatter he became. And the trouble was, the fatter he became, the more hungry he became. And the more hungry he became, the more he ate. And the more he ate, the fatter he became.
Oh yeah, it's a cycle, a vicious cycle that can't be
One
broken.
morning, Mr. Greedy awoke rather early. As usual, he'd been dreaming about food.
Of course.
Wake up feeling hungry. So Mr. Greedy got up, went downstairs, and ate the most enormous breakfast. This is what Mr. Greedy had for breakfast. Toast, 2 slices. Cornflakes, 1 packet. Milk, 1 bottle. Sugar, 1 bowlful.
A whole
Toast,
bottle of
3
salt.
slices.
He's a
Eggs,
fat ass.
3 boiled. Toast, 4 slices. Butter, 1 dish. Marmalade, 1 pot. Toast, 6 slices. That was a delicious breakfast. Now, I wonder what would be nice to have for lunch.
He's already thinking about lunch.
Go for a long walk.
Yeah, he's had a... Yeah, well at least he gets exercise, but he's still a fat ass.
Walked and walked.
Walked
Then
and walked.
he discovered a cave. That's funny. I don't remember seeing that there before. Mr. Greedy, being a curious old fellow, decided to explore. He entered the dark cave. Inside, he discovered some giant steps leading up
those inflections he does, Arthur Lowe does.
Mr. Greedy climbed up. At the top of the steps, Mr. Greedy came to a door. It was, without doubt, the biggest door that Mr. Greedy had ever seen. And it was
Curiosity always gets the better of you.
So Mr.
As you can see here.
Squeezed himself through the crack in the door. And there before him was an amazing sight. The biggest room in the world. The floor was as big as a field. The table in the middle of the floor was as big as a house, and the chairs around it were as high as trees. Mr. Greedy felt very small, and then he sniffed. Coming from somewhere up on top of the gigantic table was the most delicious foody smell Mr. Greedy had ever smelled. Mr. Greedy sniffed again, and then decided that he must get up onto that table.
Greedy fat ass.
Up the leg of the enormous chair. It was very difficult. But eventually, Mr. Greedy stood on the table.
Huge
Everything larger than life. The salt and pepper pots were both as big as pillar boxes.
Just stands there before me.
There was a bowl of fruit on the table, and Mr. Greedy tried to lift one of the oranges. And Mr. Greedy, being Mr. Greedy, took a bite out of one of the apples. Then he looked around. Over on the other side of the table stood the sauce of that delicious. A huge...
Weren't the giant gone at the time and just leaving the plate there?
And on the plate, huge, enormous, gigantic, colossal sausages the size of pillows. And huge, enormous, gigantic, colossal potatoes the size of beach balls. And huge, enormous, colossal beans the size of peppers. Mr. Greedy flooded across the table toward the plate, and being Mr. Greedy began to eat. Suddenly, a shadow.
Why is he starting with the
Mr.
peas?
Greedy found himself being picked up by a giant hand and looking into the eyes of a real live giant. And who are you? Mr. Greedy was so frightened that he could only just manage to squeak his name. Mr. Greedy! The giant laughed, a laugh as loud as thunder.
I would have started with the sausages. That laugh could also be a jump scare.
Greedy by name and greedy by nature.
You see, sounds like an Irish giant to
Now, I
me.
think, Mr. Greedy, that you need to be taught a lesson. And what a lesson it was. The giant made Mr. Greedy eat up everything on that huge, enormous, gigantic, colossal plate. When he finished, Mr. Greedy felt very ill.
Ill. That's another very British term, saying ill rather than sick.
The giant had a much quieter voice. Do you promise never to be greedy again? Oh, yes. Moaned Mr. Greedy.
But then he forgot that lesson much later on.
Then I'll let you go.
Why does he laugh after that?
Mr. Greedy climbed down.
Yeah, sure he's a very kindly giant in reality.
Feeling very fat.
And he knows right and
And you
wrong.
know, from that day to this, Mr. Greedy has kept his promise.
No, he hasn't.
And
He,
as well. Mr. Greedy doesn't look like he used to look anymore. He now looks like this, which I think suits him a lot better, don't you?
well, yeah, I think so,
if you
but...
know anybody who's as greedy as Mr. Greedy used to be, you know what to tell them. Beware of the giant.
But then Mr.
I'll
Greedy...
let you go.
Yeah, we know the drill at this point. This, transition thing.
What a lot of Mr. Men there are.
Yeah, we went a bit further. Okay, last one, Mr. Tickle. The very first Mr. Men story that Roger Hargreaves ever wrote. Ironic how the last one on this tape is the first one Roger ever wrote. Mr. Tickle has a big dick. Mr. Dick.
It was a warm, sunny morning.
And this was probably the first one that was ever broadcast as well.
In his small house at the other side of the wood, Mr. Tickle was asleep. You didn't know that there was such a thing as a tickle, did you? Oh, well, there is. Tickles are small and round, and they have arms that stretch and stretch and stretch.
So Mr. Tickle is one of a many race of
Mr. Tickle was
one of a many race of animals.
He was having a dream. It must have been a very funny dream, because it made him laugh out loud. And that woke him up. He sat up in bed,
We never
stretched
find out
his
what it was.
extraordinarily long arms, and yawned. An enormous yawn.
Yawn.
Mr. Tickle felt hungry, so do you know what he did? He reached out one of his extraordinarily long arms, opened the bedroom door, reached down the stairs, opened the kitchen door, reached into the kitchen cupboard, opened the biscuit tin, took out a biscuit, brought it back upstairs, and back to Mr. Tickle. As you can see, it's very useful indeed, having arms as long as Mr. Tickle.
How did Mr. Tickle even know where he was reaching?
Munched his biscuit.
Biscuits for breakfast.
Looked out of the window.
Lovely.
Today looks
Interesting.
very much like a tickling day, he thought to himself. So,
When you like
later that morning,
biscuits for
after Mr.
breakfast,
Tickle had
lovely.
made his bed and cooked his breakfast, he set off through the wood. As he
Who
walked
still
along,
bothers to make
his
beds?
eyes very wide open, looking for somebody to tickle, looking for anybody to tickle. Eventually, Mr. Tickle came to a school.
Is this the same school Jack goes to?
Reaching up his extraordinarily long arms,
Extraordinarily long penis.
he pulled himself up and peeked in through the open window. Inside, he could see a classroom. There were children sitting at their desks, and a teacher writing on the blackboard. Mr. Tickle reached in through the window with that extraordinarily long arm of his, went up behind a little boy called Peter, and tickled him on the back of his neck.
Penis.
Peter giggled out loud. Stop that giggling at once, said the teacher sternly. Mr. Tickle waited a minute, then reached in through the window again. Mr. Tickle's extraordinarily long arm went right up to the teacher, paused, and then tickled him. The teacher jumped in the air and turned round very quickly to see who was there. But there was nobody there. Mr. Tickle grinned, a mischievous grin. He waited another minute and then tickled the teacher again. This time he kept on tickling, until soon the teacher was laughing out loud and saying, "Oh, stop it! Stop it over and stop it over and over and over again." And all the children were laughing too at such a funny sight. There was a terrible pandemonium. Eventually, Mr. Tickle thought he'd had enough fun. So he gave the teacher
Certainly
one more
there.
tickle for luck. Then he quietly brought his arm back through the open window. Chuckling to himself, he jumped out of the window, leaving the poor teacher to explain what it was all about, which of course he couldn't. Then Mr. Tickle went to town. And what a day Mr. Tickle had.
Yeah, he went. Yeah, now the music gets a bit higher pitched. See how he never gets boring?
Duty at the crossroads in the middle of the town. It caused an enormous traffic jam.
Royal Bridge. What a nuisance Mr. Tickle is in reality. And in fact, I realised something. Mr. Tickle going up and tickling people without consent. that could be tickling people without consent and causing all this trouble could count as assault and property damage, I guess.
As he lifted his arm in the air, Mr. Tickle tickled him. And every time he tried to wave his flag, Mr. Tickle tickled him. And tickled him again. Until the train was 10 minutes late, and all the passengers were absolutely furious.
Yeah, you see what I mean? Why is it making a steam train sound when it's clearly an electric multiple unit?
That day, Mr. Tickle tickled everybody.
The way he's looking at my dad, almost sus like that.
He tickled the doctor. He tickled the butcher.
Whistling the Mr. Man theme.
He even tickled old Mr. Stamp, the postman.
Mr. Stamp.
Who dropped all his letters into a puddle.
Interesting.
Then Mr. Tickle went home.
And cut off a bit. Doing your mark. Yeah, it could count as assault. And all the inconveniences he caused, Mr. Tickle could technically be charged with that.
Out here in his small house at the other side of the wood, he laughed and laughed and laughed every time he thought about all the people he tickled.
You little bastard.
Oh dear. Oh.
Mr. Tickle's a bastard, really. Usually it's the lower pitch version that's the theme song, but here it's the higher pitch version in E flat, I believe. Well, that's the end of this VHS review. In a few days, or in a week or two, whenever I feel like it, but fairly soon, hopefully, I'm planning on doing my Little Miss VHS review to coincide with this one. But I hope you enjoyed this one for now. Hope you're looking forward to the next ones. Oh no, there's the moon there for some reason. Yeah, I hope you're all looking forward to the next ones. As I said, I'm not going to do the tape rewinding because it's, there's a lot of tape. So, yeah, get this VHS if you want. I really enjoyed this. Get it if you like. It's pretty nostalgic, especially if you're a Mr. Men fan. Yeah, this was a nice bit of nostalgia for me today. Hope you all enjoyed yourselves. And as I said, yes, I would recommend adding this to your collection. Yeah, we have. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to doing my Little Miss VHS review in 1 or 2 weeks. We'll just have to wait and see when in that time I feel like it. But yeah. Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed yourselves tonight. Thanks again so much for watching. Please like, comment, share this video with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to me, Trainlover16, if you haven't already, to stay tuned for my other upcoming videos and live streams. And I will see you all in my next video. Goodbye, everyone.